Kawasaki have been making their H2 line of motorcycles for nearly 10 years now. It's a bit mind-blowing how much time has passed since the Ninja H2 first came out in 2015. And bikes like the ZH2 here and the H2SX were born from the Ninja H2. But in today's video, I'm going to give you a few reasons why the ZH2 is perhaps the best H2. Let's go. Yes, everyone, the Kawasaki ZH2. Now, I want to caveat this video today by saying that this is entirely my own opinion, and I have not yet ridden the likes of the H2SX or the Ninja H2 yet. Hopefully one day I will get the opportunity to have a go on those bikes, but if you're looking at a H2 motorcycle, I don't want you to overlook this bike here. Don't be put off by the looks. I personally think this bike is actually quite pretty, especially with this aftermarket slip-on exhaust that I put on recently. And trust me, the riding experience more than makes up for it if you're not quite a fan of the look of the ZH2. Right, but let's jump on and let me show you why this bike is arguably the best, if not one of the best, H2 variants on the market right now. Now, I'm not sure if there's going to be a second generation ZH2 or a second generation H2SX. I kind of suspect that the H2SX variant of the H2 line is slightly more popular than this one because it's more touring oriented, and that's what that motorcycle is made for touring. But this ZH2 here is made for absolute fun. I mean, this thing is just a wheelie monster. I mean, that was just a baby wheelie right there, but this road isn't exactly that big. But I think this motorcycle perhaps gives you the most amount of fun with the least amount of compromises. Perhaps the biggest compromise that this bike has over the Ninja H2 is it's heavier. About 40 kilograms heavier, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, give or take. But this motorcycle is certainly a heavy one. But it is significantly more fun than anything else I've ever ridden in my life. This ZH2 is certainly one of the best motorcycles I've ever owned. I've ever had the pleasure of owning. I mean, when you can just pull wheelies like that and accidentally knock it into neutral. Cows. It's just an absolute blast, man. What this bike can do. Sorry, I just wanted to double check that my cameras are all still on the bike. But yeah, the least amount of compromise is made for, and it is totally for street use as well. I mean, the fact that you've got levels of comfort that you wouldn't get on the Ninja H2, I think is perhaps one of the biggest reasons why this bike is the best, because the performance is pretty much on par with the Ninja H2 in terms of horsepower and torque. Yeah, okay, it's missing a little bit of that top end horsepower. Yeah, all right, and it's missing a little bit of that top speed. But I'm talking for street use, all right? Street use solely. If you're going to be riding this bike on the street, this arguably is the best one to get in terms of the riding experience. And the annoying thing is that you guys have to take my word for it unless you have a go on one of these things yourselves. Trust me, it is one of the best experiences I've ever had on a motorcycle. I hope one day that something else out there will eclipse this motorcycle, but I mean, in terms of just outright performance, the Ninja H2 definitely has got to be the king when it comes to the H2 line. However, it's not really an attainable motorcycle. First of all, you've got to spend a lot of money getting it, but secondly, it's not just on the showroom. The ZH2 is on the showroom ready to go. The Ninja H2 isn't. It has to be built. I think they're built to order. So you have to wait for months and months on end, maybe even longer than that, before your bike is ready to be collected. And let's be honest here, for street use, the Ninja H2 is overkill, totally overkill. You could make the argument that the ZH2 is also totally overkill. The thing is as well, like price-wise, this isn't crazy price-wise either. 16, 17 grand on the road. I've got to get used to feathering that throttle a little bit more when I'm picking up that front wheel, but and I mean, you can get these used for just over 10 grand, I think, at the moment, in really good condition with hardly any mileage. So in terms of price, you're not paying through the nose for a motorcycle that arguably is quite unique. And you can imagine how much it would have cost to develop this motorcycle and develop the Ninja H2 and the H2SX. And so the fact that you can get a bike like this that is has such a special sauce in that supercharger, it just makes this bike ever more attractive for someone like me. I mean, you're just gonna have buckets of fun on this bike. And it's, yeah, okay, I think this is arguably one of the hardest motorcycles to ride. Well, I say hardest, maybe one of the scariest motorcycles to ride, just because the throttle is a little bit twitchy. You get a lot of torque down low, you get even more torque in the mid-range, and then you get even more torque towards the top end as the supercharger spools up more and more. As the crankshaft rotates faster, well, you're going to get more air getting into the cylinders from the supercharger. That's how superchargers work. But see, it just jumps up on you. Yeah, that top end horsepower is absolutely lovely. The thing is as well, even when it comes to 0 to 60, quarter mile, things like that, the ZH2 again is on par with the likes of the Ninja H2, despite the fact that it's heavier and has less top end horsepower. This bike is a no-brainer. If you're looking at H2 and you're not really all that concerned with pillion riding or doing a lot of touring, then this bike has got to be the one. It has to be the one you go for, seriously. The thing is, the H2SX, it has a longer wheelbase than this bike, I believe, and I think it's heavier than this bike as well by a significant margin, and it doesn't quite have the torque that this bike does, at least from reviewers, from what I've seen from reviewers. One of these days I will get to have a go on a H2SX and I will confirm my findings, or at least confirm the findings of other reviewers, especially when they're compared to the H2SX, when it's compared to the ZZR 1400, which pretty much is its predecessor in a lot of ways, but arguably it isn't. I think the ZZR has got a lot more to offer than the H2SX does, pretty much because of all that displacement and all that horsepower and all that torque. That ZZR produces more torque than this bike and the H2SX. So man, I've got to get the hang of that. Let's try again. Yeah, you just give it a little bit of throttle and the front wheel wants to come up, but of course you haven't got much throttle to let go of. And so the front end just comes down pretty rapidly. So one of those things that I haven't got used to yet on this bike is being able to control that throttle well enough that I can kind of sustain a wheelie. I mean, first gear is arguably, well, no, it is the hardest gear to control, but second gear, I mean, you're doing 60, 70 mile an hour by the time you're pulling a wheelie, so at least if you're rolling on the throttle anyway. Maybe if you're a bit more aggressive with the throttle, maybe it's a little bit different, but you guys know me, I don't like to be all that aggressive on these bikes. So this is a bike that is readily available right now for you to buy in dealerships. It has on par performance for street use than the Ninja H2, and it is priced very, very competitively in the space. It is the most expensive naked I think there is out there, aside from maybe some of the Italian offerings that are out there, but this is the cheapest of the Italian bunch as far as I'm aware. I don't know, I'll have to double check that, but price-wise is competitive towards European nakeds, things like the Tuono and the Street Fighter V4 and V2, but it is overly priced when you compare it to the likes of the MT-10, the Super Duke. I mean, I don't actually know how much Super Duke is these days, because they've just come out with a new model, haven't they? I think it's the 1390. It's no longer a 1290 Super Duke, it's a 1390 Super Duke, which is awesome. And the fact that that's a parallel twin, just insane, man. Crazy. There are so many good nakeds out there, and the fact that the ZH2 provides such a good experience. I mean, I can't wait to have a go on the other bikes that are available in this kind of category of motorcycles, this super naked, hyper naked category. Now, when I say least compromise on this motorcycle, I mean in terms of the experience, the riding experience. There are some compromises in terms of comfort. The ergonomics are lovely, very neutral. You don't have a lot of reach to get to the handlebars from an upright seating position, but you know me, I've complained about the seat quite a lot on this bike in the past, and it's not getting any better for me. The seat is arguably the limiting factor of this motorcycle when it comes to doing longer journeys. But the fact it's got all of the touring gizmos that you might want, like cruise control, it is somewhat built for touring, and I have no doubt that you could fit some aftermarket panniers to this thing. I don't know if Kawasaki make their own panniers for the ZH2. Certainly not a top box, not these days anyway. Kawasaki seems to be moving away from top boxes, I think. But it's those are the kinds of compromises that you're making, small compromises. But the actual experience of riding the bike is second to none. Arguably, I keep saying arguably, it is. Right, it is one of the best experiences that you will have on two wheels. I'm telling you. Even more so than the likes of the H2SX. Alright. Even though they both have pretty much the same engine, same supercharger and all that. But the ZH2, I think, is either geared differently, or because of that shorter wheelbases and that the lighter frame, the lighter build, I think is probably what makes the difference between this and the H2SX. But another thing about the ZH2, which probably makes it the best of the bunch, is that it's the easiest to work on and probably the most reliable. Between this and the H2SX, they're probably both as reliable as one another, but the ZH2 doesn't have that fairing that you got to worry about so much. So doing maintenance work on this bike isn't a big deal, it's not so bad. Getting access to the oil filter is a bit of a problem. You do have to take off a piece of fairing that kind of goes underneath the exhaust, but that's not too bad. Taking that off isn't too bad. So it's just one extra step, and then you get access to the oil filter just like you would on any other bike. And I suppose if you really wanted to, you could leave off that piece of fairing in the future. You can leave it off, so it'd make it even easier for you to do maintenance work on this bike. But from the things that I've had to do on this bike, adjusting the gear lever, filling up the clutch fluid reservoir with fresh fluid, easy. I mean, the reason why I mentioned that specifically is because this goes dark. Apparently it's quite a common issue on ZH2s, maybe the same on H2SXs and Ninjas as well, but the clutch fluid just goes dark. It doesn't make the performance any worse, but it doesn't look all that pretty. So you can just change it with some new dot 4, and to be fair, since I've done that, it hasn't gone dark since. So it must have been just something with that particular clutch fluid. I don't know. But honestly, everyone, like, I think this is an underrated motorcycle in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the attention that it deserves, to be perfectly honest with you. Bikes like the Ninja H2 is like the poster bike, but this is actually attainable and realistic. Alright, I'm not a rich guy by any stretch of the imagination, But if you're looking to buy a brand new motorcycle, most of us, well, I say most of us, maybe not these days with interest rates how high they are at the moment, but when I bought this motorcycle, interest rates were nice and low, and so monthly payments weren't that bad on PCP. And I have about, I think it's 1 more year left on this bike, but I think I'm going to keep it. I genuinely like this motorcycle. I love this bike so much. I think I'm going to keep it. Originally, that wasn't the plan. Originally, I was going to sell this bike, clear the PCP contract, and buy something else. But I don't think I'm going to. That's a cool car. It's a hot rod. Hot rod Beetle. So I'm really conflicted. I don't want to give this bike up. I love it so much. So I don't know. It's a tough decision for me to make, but we don't have to worry about that now. I don't think this is. I don't know. This isn't going to be the final year of the ZH2. I have to keep this bike. I love it so much, and I can't say enough good things about this bike. Yes, it's got some issues, as we've mentioned before in previous videos, but they're small issues, to be perfectly honest with you. So don't worry about it. And I mean, I mentioned reliability. There aren't, at least as far as I could find, there aren't any reports of these engines malfunctioning. The original Ninja H2 supercharged engines, well, you may have found some issues in those. It may be like the first run of them or second run, something like that. But they've pretty much got the engine sorted out now with the likes of the ZH2 and the H2SX. There have been a couple of recalls, but these recalls aren't catastrophic to the bike as far as I'm aware, and there hasn't been any reports that I'm aware of engine malfunctions or anything like that. But you guys let me know down in the comment section below if you've heard differently, if there have been reports that you've found, that you've seen of some of these bikes going bad. But I had no problems with this motorcycle whatsoever. I can't remember how much mileage I've done, but it's about 4,000 miles. I've had no issues with it whatsoever, none whatsoever. You don't really expect there to be any issues with a bike that is bought from new with a warranty, but it does happen, and especially with motorcycles that aren't necessarily all that tried and tested. This whole supercharged stuff is fairly new for Kawasaki. I know that there are turbo bikes that have been made before, but none of them have been successful. This is the first line of motorcycles, as far as I'm aware, that has had somewhat success and continues to be successful. It continues to be a motorcycle range that Kawasaki make and sell. Yeah, man, it's a tough one. It's a real tough one, but these bikes, if we have reliability issues with them in future, well, I'll have to eat my own words, but this bike is second to none. It is the best motorcycle I've ever ridden, and I have a feeling it's going to be in that position for a long time. I'm hoping that if I get to have a go on a Street Fighter V2 or V4 or maybe even a Tuono, that maybe then I can have a bit of a clearer picture about where this ZH2 stands in terms of the riding experience. But until that day comes, everyone, heed my words, do a test ride on this bike if you're looking at one of the supercharged motorcycles from Kawasaki. If you're looking at a H2SX, don't overlook this ZH2. Seriously, give it a go, ride it, you will love it, you will fall in love with it. And it's going to be quite a selfish thing, because if you do plan to do some touring on this H2 bike, well, it's going to be a very difficult decision. I would still take the ZH2, even if I was taking a pillion, I'd still take the ZH2. I'd huff it, but the H2SX is going to be better for touring, hands down. All right, but still, the riding experience, hands down, this is the best of the bunch because of its ergonomics, because of its torque, because of its fun factor. This bike's got a lot going for it, man, and it's amazing. But you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section below, as always, regarding the ZH2. I know that a few of you have left comments before about how you've bought a ZH2 as a result of watching our videos, and you have very similar feelings to me. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below, as always. Leave that like for the Kawasaki ZH2, hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you all in the next video. Everyone, take care, ride safe.